Good morning and welcome to As Goes Wisconsin, Tuesday, October 10th. It's Tuesday. That means Dom Salvia is here as my co-host while Kristen is on maternity leave. How you doing? Boy, you are busy and all over the Civic Media Network.
Yeah, lots of things to talk about, Jane. Always a pleasure to join you on Tuesdays. Thank you.
Oh, always great to have you here. And of course, it's always great to have Greg Bach on the board.
He's a soup fan.
I'm a soup fan.
We got off on this weird soup discussion this morning about what a perfect. Last week when you were here, we all went out for lunch after the show, and we were sitting outside because it
beautiful
was so
downtown,
beautiful.
Some sunshine,
Yep.
a little breeze, good food outside.
Yeah.
I had shorts and flip flops, and
That's gone.
wearing pants and tennis shoes today, Jane. What's going on in Wisconsin?
That's why it's kind of a soupy kind of day.
Yes,
So
indeed.
maybe we'll take your favorite soups a little bit later on, but we did want to start off. And I know Earl spent quite a bit of time talking about this morning, about the war between Israel and that's going on in Palestine, and some really tragic numbers. Israel does say it has retaken control of the border with Gaza, but at least 900 dead in Israel, at least 770 dead in Gaza. Those numbers will likely rise. We will pass that information along as we get it. But we're going to start things off this morning with a piece that just came out about an hour ago from Scott Bauer from the Associated Press, and it's related to newly elected Justice Janet Protasiewicz and whether or not she should recuse herself from a redistricting lawsuit.
Hell no, she shouldn't recuse herself.
And you know who agrees with you?
Who?
Former Justice Prosser.
What?
Yeah. Yep. Justice Prosser, former Justice Prosser, David Prosser, was asked by Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, along with two other former justices, to review the possibility of impeaching Justice Janet. On Friday, Prosser sent Robin Vos an email, seemingly just before Justice Janet announced she wasn't going to recuse, because that happened on Friday too. David Prosser says, do not move forward with impeachment. He had to turn over the email to the liberal watchdog group American Oversight.
Thank you, Oversight.
Part of a FOIA request. It's an open records request. And here's what it says, quote, to sum up my views, there should be no effort to impeach Justice Protasiewicz on anything we know now. Impeachment is so serious, severe, and rare that it should not be considered unless the subject has committed a crime or the subject has committed indisputable corrupt conduct while in office. That's kind of surprising. Or is it? Well,
it's
surprising?
Proper. I think it's the right response. I think it's accurate. It's, but yes, the fact that it comes from a conservative, the fact that it comes from someone like Prosser.
Right.
Wow. I mean,
that's
good to hear.
That seems pretty big to me. But I do think that our friend Greg Bach has a slightly different take on this.
I think that what Justice Prosser is doing is something similar to what we saw the U.S. Supreme Court do earlier this year, which is when Congress was trying to get in there saying, hey, we wanted to give some oversight. Everything's going on with Justice Thomas and Alito. Maybe it's time for some oversight to come into the court. I mean, you guys have it pretty simple, pretty easy. And all of them, including the liberal ones, said, no, we're good. We're fine. Don't need your help. We're fine. We do things the way we do it. You don't need to come in here. The house is a mess. We don't have time. We don't have time for company right now.
Yeah.
And I think what Prosser is doing is sort of the same way, protecting that world that he's a part of, even though he's not in it now. He's a part of it, and he's protecting those roles, because if they come and knocking for Judge Janet, who's to say that a liberal group won't come knocking for one of their own?
That's a great point, Greg. Also, Scott Bauer reporting at the AP in the email, Prosser said he did not think Protasiewicz met the standard for impeachment, which is reserved for corrupt conduct in office or for crimes and misdemeanors. She had not committed a crime or corrupt conduct, Prosser said. Quote, in my view, corrupt conduct is not a term that is open to a mere political grievance. If that were the case, legislative bodies could be trading questionable impeachments with considerable frequency. Prosser cautioned that using impeachment to delay or affect the outcome of any single case will be viewed as unreasonable partisan politics. Hell, he must have been listening to the devil's advocates last night, Jay, because that was my point. Because if that's the case, if you're just going to willy-nilly impeach because, well, sooner or later, whether the Republicans think it's going to happen or not. There will someday be, Dems in charge of the state legislature. And when you want a tit for tat on that, hell no. And maybe, as Greg says, he's also taking a position to protect, at least as best he can, the rule of law, which makes sense, but also a separate co-equal branch of government in the judicial branch.
I wish this was a good faith argument.
You wish it was just bathed in a altruistic soup?
Because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't buy that, but I can't disagree that there is no reason for her to recuse herself, especially since we know what some of our other justices said when they were running for the Supreme Court.
No question. No question. And not only did she prefaced, maybe she said it afterwards, but she made her comments about her feelings, her opinion on it. And I think anybody, if you look at the facts, can come up with that same opinion. Now, if you're going to be totally biased and partisan, and Robin Vos, no, it's nothing to do with the map. It's greater ideas and better candidates. Well, if that was the case, you wouldn't have gone through the effort and the secrecy back in the day when you had, everybody come and sign non-disclosure agreements on a campus off-site with your law firm to go street by street, bit by bit, and tell them, hey, you're going to be +2 here, you're going to be +2 there. If that were the case, they would not have gone through that effort. So of course that is the thing. But she also said, I want this. This is my opinion. I'm going to look at this with an open mind. That she said something to that effect. Well, it gives her a caveat, it gives her an out. She didn't say, I'm going to rule this way on this case. So this is just, the Republicans, in my mind, just see the writing on the wall. There's people that come on. She won by 200,000 plus votes. It's a big kick for the Republicans,
Yes.
and they're having a hard time dealing with that.
Yes, they are. 844-967-2789. 844-96-party. Do you think, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice David Prosser out with his opinion. And don't forget that he is one of the former justices tapped by Popcorn King Assembly Speaker Robin Vos to look at whether or not Justice Janet Protasewicz should recuse herself. So he says no. He says there's no reason to do it. In order to justify that, she would have to have done a crime. She did not crime, as far as we know.
There's no corrupt conduct.
There's no corrupt conduct. She hasn't even been there long enough to do anything corrupt. Doesn't it take longer than that? Come on. And again, when you go back to what Brian Hagedorn said about Planned Parenthood, what Rebecca Dallett said in some of her previous writings, if that,
I mean, Bradley? Was that
Bradley? It was
Yes,
Bradley.
yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, if that was okay, then why not this?
Then why not this? So, of course. Heather Sawyer, the American Oversight's executive director, said this. Justice Prosser's opinion letter demonstrates why Speaker Voss's secret panel needs to operate in public. We still don't know everyone involved or what other work has been done, and we'll keep pressing to ensure that the people of Wisconsin have full transparency and accountability regarding the speaker's impeachment plans. We would not know this if not for American oversight. I don't think he didn't release this, to us as soon as he got it, right?
Right. No, it was a FOIA request. It was an open records request. 844-967-2789 if you want to check in. We have Joe from Appleton on the phone. Good morning, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Good morning, guys.
So, what do you think?
Well, I think with Prosser's statement and with Voss's statement yesterday, where he didn't bring up impeachment, he did bring up taking it to the Supreme Court. I think he's signaling that they're going to back off impeachment, but they'll just try to appeal any negative ruling to SCOTUS. Good luck there. Which, yeah, I guess this is good news.
You sound, we're so grudging about it. Yeah, it's okay. It's good. I know. But
well, the thing is, I wrote a song. I wrote and recorded a song. It was a parody of Richmond, north of Richmond. It was all about the Wisconsin GOP, and it was going to be steeped in this whole impeachment thing. And now it's just kind of worthless. No one's going to care.
Oh, now you got to rewrite it, Joe. It's got new lyrics and stuff.
There's nothing much left. I mean, I was all set to record the video. I got a fake red beard and everything. I mean, this was going to be big. I was ready for the fame, and
Well,
one's-
Joe, I
no
would
one's
just
gonna
say, man,
care.
hang on to the tunes, man. Maybe you have to rewrite it. But the good news is these Republicans are still in control here, generally in the state of Wisconsin, certainly in the legislature. And it won't be long before they're pushing us up against the precipice of another constitutional crisis. So just keep it in your back pocket, Joe. I'm sure next week will bring new tunes.
Otherwise, Joe, you can always
Well-
send it to Greg Bach. We can put it into our bumper rotation.
There we go, man.
We're happy to do that.
No, it's worthless now. No one cares anymore. It's
Joe, believe in yourself.
Come on, you can do it,
a
Joe.
waste of time now.
Why are we here?
Hang in there, Joe. Thank you for calling.
All right, guys.
Have a great day. 844-967-2789. What do you think? Text and or call and let us know how you feel about the former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice David Prosser coming out with his opinion that newly elected Justice Janet Protasiewicz should not recuse herself from the fair maps conversation. I think this is good.
Impeachment is so serious, severe, and rare that it should not be considered unless the subject has committed a crime or the subject has committed indisputable corrupt conduct while in office.
And there is no proof of that. There is no proof of that.
I'm curious. I would assume, since American Oversight, if this is a FOIA request, would have received everything. So are there any other opinions? Are there any other Supreme Court justices that have given their take on
Right.
it? Love to hear that.
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear someone come out. I'd like to hear Voss or some other Republican say, no, Prosser's totally wrong, and here's why.
Yeah.
If you don't hear that, he's right. Because he's right. Of course he's right.
844-967-2789. We are going to break. We'll take your calls and your texts when we come back. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. J-Matt there in for Kristen Bride. Greg is on the board. Dominic Salvia, my co-host on Tuesdays, while Kristen is out on maternity leave. And we're always happy to hear from you at 844-967-2789. Starting out the conversation this morning, talking about former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice David Prosser coming out with his opinion that Justice Janet should not recuse herself from a case about instituting fair maps in Wisconsin. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this suspicious? Because he didn't, like Dominic pointed out before the break, you said it's not like he turned this over voluntarily to the public. It was an open records request by an oversight group. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think it's good. At least it's something. But I'm always suspicious now of when things do not go the GOP's way, they find a way around it.
We're low PTSD.
Let's write a new law
Yeah.
that will supersede, what we just said to work in our favor. So what do you think? 844-967-2789. Texter from the 262 says Prosser coming out with that statement just means we're on a countdown until Voss and the rest of the lunatic fringe of the GOP start calling him a rhino. That does seem to be kind of the go-to.
Well, he was primaried, right? Adam Steen, I think the guy who was,
yes,
right?
For Robin Voss.
And
yeah.
Trump supported Robin Voss's primary opponent. Robin Voss won by less than 200 votes in his district.
Yeah, just squeaked by.
The Republican Party's in disarray, Jane.
Well, that's what I've heard.
I mean, to me, it feels like if Robin Voss doesn't come out for impeachment, I think this might be like it's something he led so hard on a couple weeks ago. If he doesn't come out for this and he doesn't try to push back in some way, shape, or form, he is. I don't want to say he's out, but it's not going to be easy. That next election, it's going to be even more. Those Republicans in that district are going to go after him.
You think they'll be very, very unhappy about this?
I think they'll be unhappy. I think they'll see him as weak. I think they'll see him as a rhino. I think they'll see him as everything that he doesn't want to be viewed as because he needs to retain that power because the popcorn king rules all.
The crown is heavy of the popcorn king.
Yeah, it's kind of light, actually. It's made out of popcorn, man.
It's light. The crown is light and fluffy with a nice buttery taste.
844-967-2789 if you want to check in on this. We're going to continue this probably after 10:33. Dan Schaefer will be here from the Recombobulation Area, so we will recombobulate, and there's a big column with a guest writer about this very issue that you know this person, Greg Bach, the writer of Sacha.
Oh, Sechin Cheta.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
Sechin
Sechin.
Cheta.
Yes. Yes, I do. Sechin is a very good man. Very good man.
So we will be talking about that after the bottom of the hour break when Dan Schaefer joins us. Fascists never take a day off, says John from the Falls. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Again, I just think there's a lot of suspicion whenever it seems like something is going the Democrats' way. It's
Well, I
like,
mean,
right,
it's it's rightfully so. It's a little PTSD. Look at how things have gone over the last 15 years in the
Right.
state of Wisconsin. You can kind of, I'm totally there. Always, keep your head on a swivel. Okay, this one seems to be going our way. Seems to be going justly, which is our way usually, right? But what's the next shoe to drop? What's the next angle? Governor Evers spoke up. Molly Beck, also at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, writing on this piece, updating her piece. Yesterday, it came out entitled "Robin Vos Now Silent on Impeachment" after former justice tells him not to pursue. Here's what Tony Evers had to say yesterday. The governor from the state of Wisconsin, quote, "Impeaching is just a really horrible imposition on our democracy. I'm hopeful that they won't do it. We can discuss strategies at some time when we know what they are going to do. It's an attack on our democracy, and it just shouldn't happen." Former Justice David Prosser agreeing with our current current Democratic governor, Tony Evers.
Yeah, which is just crazy.
And yesterday we were agreeing with Glenn Grothman and Robin
I know.
Voice. Here's the thing is we talk about we're like, we want compromise, we want to agree. And then the moment we do, we're like, ugh, this feels awful.
How can this be happening? It's just so out of the ordinary that something comes out that is not cuckoo crazy.
Yeah.
But sooner or later, don't they run out of cards up their sleeves? You know what I mean? Sooner or later, you got to be respond to the electorate. Sooner or later, you got to follow the law. Sooner or later, you know what I'm saying? Don't they kind of run out of steam? And it seems like that's kind of where we're getting to.
Do you think so?
I do.
I think they have many decks.
Many decks.
I think they have many decks up their sleeves. And the ability to cheat or go around or write new laws to keep things in their court.
Yeah, but with a Democratic governor and now a liberal-leaning Wisconsin Supreme Court, this is why the desperation.
For sure.
You talk about impeaching someone for no reason. I mean, that's it. And this isn't like, oh, you impeach Donald Trump, we're going to impeach Joe Biden. We can get there as well. But that's that mentality. Oh, absolutely nothing wrong. You just got your ass handed to you in an election, and now you're afraid that we're going to get some more representative maps, not even exactly even, because it is what it is.
Right.
That's all we're looking for is a fair shot, and they're going to struggle. Of course, they're going to fight against it tooth and nail.
Well, and as Kristen had said, and we've had many guests on who have reinforced this as well, even if we do get fairer maps, there is no guarantee that the Democrats are going to sweep in and take everything.
No.
And I don't think most Wisconsin residents want that. Most Wisconsinites just don't like people who cheat.
I think most Wisconsinites want representative government.
And representatives who actually have to respond to their phone calls and their letters and do things, I don't know, it's crazy, that their constituents want.
Constituent services? What?
844-967-2789. When we come back, we're recombobulating with Dan Schaefer from the Recombobulation Area. Please stay with us. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Matnair in for Kristen Bry. Gregory Buck is on the board. Dominic Salvia is my co-host on Tuesdays while Kristen is out. And every Tuesday at 10:30, we recombobulate. You know that because of that musical intro. Dan Schaefer is joining us this morning. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, Dan.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having me.
Always a pleasure to have you. If you dipped in a little bit earlier, we were talking about the news this morning. Scott Bauer in the Associated Press with an article that former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice David Prosser, his opinion on whether or not current and newly elected Justice Janet Protasewicz should recuse herself from a redistricting issue. And he had to turn over an email because it was an open records request. And basically he says, no, she should not recuse. There's no reason for her to recuse. No. And you have a kind of a companion article in the Recombobulation Area, correct?
Yeah, we published a guest column late Sunday night, sent it out on Monday morning from Sechin Cheta, who was part of the Protasewicz campaign. He's been active in a number of fair maps related groups over the years. And the title of the piece is "The Right-Wing Recusal Fairy Tale." So he took a look at the dissent from Rebecca Bradley late last Friday. Part of the Wisconsin hallmark of a Friday news dump, finding out about Janet Protasewicz not recusing, and whether or not the Wisconsin Supreme Court would take up that redistricting case. So in the dissent, Rebecca Bradley quoted Alice in Wonderland, saying we're through the looking glass. And so Sechin wrote this piece kind of in some ways in response to that, and saying, and I'll quote right from it here: if you read Justice Rebecca Bradley's dissent, she invokes Alice in Wonderland, but it is in her dissent in which you do indeed go through the looking glass. It really breaks down how different rules have been applied differently regardless of who voted for you, right? I mean, there are a number of examples for the three conservative justices on the court where maybe they should recuse, maybe they haven't, maybe they have imposed different standards based on who is bringing cases before them. But clearly, I think we're starting to see more and more that there is no reason for Janet Protasewicz to recuse, no reason to impeach. This whole thing is ridiculous, and I think the redistricting case should just go forward.
I think it's fascinating, as you just pointed out, that depending upon who is bringing the case before the court, who is supportive of this case, that changes everything when you're a Republican. And I mean, none of them have ever recused for anything, have they?
No, and I think there were even examples of Chief Justice Annette Ziegler's husband being involved with a case brought forth by Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce. As Sechin points out in the piece, that the recusal rule that was adopted by these right-wing justices is regularly referred to as the WMC recusal rule.
Oh,
So,
ouch.
clearly, they are applying some different standards to different members of the court in this case.
Do you feel, and Greg just posited this before the break, do you feel that if Robin Voss does not move forward with this, that he's going to pay amongst his own party?
I'm not sure, because I think the backlash to the impeachment threats were so overwhelming, and brought the national attention, brought the fundraising campaign from the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. Does he want to put every last member of his gerrymandered majority in the Wisconsin State Assembly under the microscope when it comes to this particular issue? I don't know. And is the appetite for it the same in the Wisconsin State Senate as it is in the Assembly? That we don't know either. We're seeing them kind of diverge on a number of key issues lately, which I think has been interesting to see. So, the Senate seems more focused on getting rid of Megan Wolf, whereas the Robin Voss and the Assembly seem a little bit more focused on the impeachment threats.
Dan Schaefer from the Recombobulation Area. Dan, the Assembly Speaker Robin Voss mentioned, well, this will go to the U.S. Supreme Court, and ultimately this will be decided by then. Is he talking specifically? And I wasn't clear. I just want to get your opinion. Do you think he's talking about the redistricting case itself? That if these four liberal justices said they're going to take it up, they rule against this case, that Voss or someone's going to take it up to the U.S. Supreme Court? What was your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's what he's done in the past. So I think that was, that when we look back to, kind of a strange process through the appeals process that landed us with the maps that we have right now, that the U.S. Supreme Court did weigh in on this, and they did rule essentially, overturning some things to impose the conservative Republican passed maps that we had for the last election. But I talked to Jeff Mandel from Law Forward in an interview not too long ago, and he noted that when that happened, when those cases were brought to the U.S. Supreme Court, that Justice Roberts specifically invited parties in extremely gerrymandered states like Wisconsin to take their cases to the state Supreme Court. So that is why the Law Forward is bringing their case to the state Supreme Court, because the U.S. Supreme Court said that that's what they should do. Now, Robin Voss, I'm sure, is well within his rights to bring these cases forward and make appeals and see what possibilities might lie out there for him. But this process is undergoing now. I think it would be happening whether or not Protasewicz won that election, because the U.S. Supreme Court ruled to say that these cases should not, on redistricting and on gerrymandering, should not be brought to federal court. In terms of state legislative maps, they should be brought to state courts, and that's what's happening.
And I just want to remind folks as well that when Robin Voss and the Republicans came forward with their map plan, that they did again in the they love middle of the night meetings. They must love staying up late and having snacks and doing their work when no one else is around, and just, no public input and stuff like that. It's just so much, it speeds up the process. But anyway, when they presented the plan that they came up with, it is not the Iowa model, because they still built in ways for the Republican-led legislature to toss whatever maps that come out in their own favor. So it's not like this was a good faith effort by the Republicans. I just don't think it is.
Yeah, I wrote about that when it happened in a column at the Recombobulation Area, and the headline for it was that this effort was desperate and deceitful. So I wrote, Robin Voss's maps gambit is desperate and deceitful. And I think, you're seeing there was no public hearing. It was rushed through. We didn't know all the full details of what was in it. There were amendments being passed in the middle of the night when that I happen to be one of those people who was watching so that they wouldn't be doing this with no one watching. But I think it was I think it was interesting too that the Senate, again, the Republican-controlled Senate, has no interest in taking up this redistricting bill either, this Iowa model either. Passed through the Assembly, they have their large majorities, passed on a party line vote. Usually what happens next is if the Senate was interested in taking it up, they would have a public hearing on it. They would have an executive session. It would go through the normal process. That hasn't happened. So I don't think the appetite for this is there in the Senate. This bill was a Swiss cheese bill with a whole bunch of holes in it that even idiots like me could find in short notice. And clearly there's just not the appetite to do this. So why would Democrats, essentially bail out Robin Voss in this scenario when he doesn't even have the support of the people in the same party in the upper chamber of the Wisconsin State Legislature? So it seems like it's going nowhere.
Dan, I wonder if this is the result of greater voter citizen participation. We look at the results of the election, record turnout. Protasewicz won by over 200,000 votes. We know when they started talking about this, people are on the phones calling their senators, calling their legislators. Ben Wickler, chair of the Dem Party here in the state of Wisconsin, they announced a fundraiser to start spending money to target specific folks. It seems like when we as a citizenry get more engaged, some of the malfeasance of the Republicans is kept at bay a bit. What's your take?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the more attention we can pay to this, the more the more light we shine on what's happening with Robin Voss and the Wisconsin State Legislature, the better, because they are often doing horrible things. And so that's why I so often focus so much of my coverage at the Recombobulation Area on the Wisconsin State Legislature, because it is the most important governing body in Wisconsin, and it is run by folks like Robin Voss who do not have the best interest of Wisconsinites at heart.
Absolutely.
And I think that effort that the Wisconsin Democrats engaged with to defend justice and really, putting the spotlight not just on Robin Voss, but on the rest of the caucus too. I think that's what often happens. Robin Voss seems comfortable going to the media and lying to them and doing his whole circus and throwing tantrums, but that shields the rest of his caucus from ever having to answer for anything. So I think it was a really smart approach by Ben Wickler and the state party by making it not just Robin Voss, because it is the 60 plus members of the Assembly, it is the 20 plus members of the state Senate who will have to answer for this. It's not just Voss.
For sure. And I think it's important as well that we continue to highlight it just seems the constant going against the will of the voters by the Republican Party in Wisconsin. We have broad support for fair maps in Wisconsin. We have broad support for increased background checks and red flag laws. We have broad support for abortion access. We have broad support for so many
Legalize marijuana.
legalized marijuana, medical marijuana. And again, they just stick their fingers in their ears and go, la, la, la. I don't care. This is what we know better. We know what's better for you. We know best.
But let's tell you how to raise your children.
Exactly. And what books they can and cannot read and what kind of medical treatment they can get. 844-967-2789. Just one real quick text that came in from Wes from Middleton. I think Voss is screwed either way. If they try to impeach, I think it will cost them dearly in the long run.
I see that was my point, is that I think we're looking at it from the point of view of strategery, but I'm talking about like the people in Robin Voss's district who have grown weary of him, who don't care of the consequences. Like, he's thinking of the consequences, but like, they're like, get him out. And if he doesn't do this and they want it, consequences be damned, and they'll just toss him out. And who knows what we'll get what's style or steel, whatever it is.
Well, and that's Steen.
Well, Adam
Exactly.
Steen,
Adam Steen.
Exactly. You got it.
Yeah, his replacement could be far worse and far more radical. But that is the first close challenge that Robin Voss has had probably in ever.
I think too, it's, there's a calculation here that he has to make, because the backlash to the impeachment threats have been immense, but also at the same time, the gerrymandered maps are his skeleton key to holding power in Wisconsin, no matter how many statewide elections they lose. Like you talked about all the examples, Jane, of, policies that Wisconsin is so extreme on. That's possible because of the maps. That's possible because Robin Voss is still holding out all the cards. And so he has governed like Wisconsin is a far right red state when we are anything but. And so you have all these issues: marijuana legalization, Medicaid expansion, go on through the list, that we are more closely aligned to like Alabama on than our moderate Midwestern neighbors. And I think, that just isn't sustainable in the long run. I just don't think it can be.
And don't forget, they also wanted permitless concealed carry in Wisconsin, which we don't want for the most part. All right, Dan Schaefer is going to be with us when we come back on the other side of the break. Wonderful piece in the Recombobulation Area comparing the Fiserv Forum deal with the proposed AmFam financing deal. That is coming up next. Don't go away. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Matnair in for Kristen Bry. Greg Fox, Soup Fan, is on the board. Dominic Salvia, my every Tuesday co-host while Kristen is off. And every Tuesday at 10:30, he joins us from the wonderful Recombobulation Area. Dan Schaefer is here. And Dan, you did a really extensive piece comparing the deals that were set up financially for Fiserv Forum compared to AmFam Field. So what are some of the bigger takeaways from that article?
Yeah, so, we're having this debate about stadium funding, and I think so often this debate can happen in the abstract. And I'm saying, well, do we want to give money to wealthy owners? Well, no, but okay, so let's figure out the state owns the stadium in a lot of these. So let's figure out what the path forward is. And I think, if you look back to the stadium deal that passed in 2015 to fund the construction of Fiserv Forum, I think there's a lot we can learn from it to inform, a potential deal for American Family Field. So I broke down, the public cost, the state level funding, the county level funding, the city level funding, and I think there are some really key commonalities, but I think there are some really important differences when you look at the two deals as well, especially on the local level, especially as it applies to the city of Milwaukee. And I think, some of the parts of the state deal wanting to, calculate how much players and team personnel are paying in income taxes, use that money to fund the construction of the deal, construction of the stadium and all that. But I think the city portion, I think, is really interesting because the city of Milwaukee ultimately passed a $47 million tax incremental financing package that not only helped fund the construction of the arena, but funded the construction of the Deer District as well. So they closed down part of what was then 4th Street. There was a kind of a land sale for a city-owned parking lot. But I think the development around the arena is one of the key differences between the American Family Field proposal and the Fiserv Forum proposal, and that is completely absent, really, from the American Family Field proposal. The Brewers are clinging to the tailgate culture of the 12,000 parking spots that they have around American Family Field, have not to this point been particularly receptive to new ideas like what we published last year at the Recombobulation Area on the Beer District, things like that. So I think that is one of the key differences. And it was ultimately a $12 million loan that the city passed that funded the Deer District. And I think that portion of it has been remarkably successful thus far. And so I think that is the type of thing that we need to be talking about with this Brewers deal as it goes forward.
Well, and again, I understand the tailgate culture. I understand what a very important part of the game and that experience is to people, but I would still think that there could be some compromise with a number of spaces and allow some development to take the burden off of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County because I and maybe this is incorrect, but it certainly feels like once again the Republican led legislature it's like whatever we do, let's make sure we stick it to Milwaukee.
Yeah, this deal definitely falls hardest on Milwaukee, I think, because the initial proposal was saying it was $200 million from the city and county combined. I've been following this deal. I've been talking to people. That was never the actual number for what the proposal was going to be. It was just something that Robin Voss inflated at the last minute before he.
What?
Yeah, I know. Hard to believe. He is not truthful with the public. It is something that he inflated. And now we got the headlines last week after the public hearing saying, oh, Milwaukee's portion is reduced. Well, those headlines were completely by design by Robin Voss, and so many in the local media played into it, unfortunately.
I'm going to mark it up 1,000% and discount it 50%. Look at the deal you got.
Exactly. So now it looks like Robin Voss and state Republicans are making concessions to Milwaukee and understanding, which is not what's happening at all. So $130 million is what's still there from the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County, taken it straight out of the shared revenue that was just renegotiated for the state to basically save the city and county from potential bankruptcy. And now they're coming back for more from that shared revenue pie. I think we have to, if there are going to be changes to get this deal over the finish line, and I think they're going to need Democratic votes to get this over the finish line, because that was the case with Fiserv Forum. Not every state Republican wants to spend this type of money for the stadium deal. I think they're going to need to lessen the burden on local taxpayers. And I think they can do that in a number of ways. They can they could just reduce it overall, but they could bring in things like a ticket surcharge. That's part of the Fiserv Forum deal. That's one of the things that I looked at with this $2 ticket surcharge for all events at Fiserv Forum, projected to generate $60 million over the course of the 30-year lease.
Wow.
That could certainly lessen the burden on the local taxpayers and put the burden on the people who are, they're paying to see games and things like that. So I think that should be, part of the deal going forward. They were resistant to that too. They said they wanted to have the ticket surcharge, but only for non-Brewer games at the stadium, which means
I'm a Brewer fan. Charge me more.
There's how many of those non-Brewer events a year for this? I mean, it's a ridiculous proposal.
Well, and now they're talking about the winterization of the place,
right.
and which, I mean, it might make sense in the long run. If you can run it year round, that's great, but just make a deal.
$25 million for winterization, though. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to ask for maybe someday possibly getting a Taylor Swift concert, because that was kind of what they were saying.
Yeah, but
hearing,
is it really that much when you're able to put up your mansion in Los Angeles at 20,000 square feet for $73 million? Is 25 million that much? I still think that those guys could kick in a little more. I really do.
That's Shane's
really,
favorite stat.
it just
Absolutely.
it annoys me.
It's like, hey, I found the local money. There it is. It's
There
right
it is.
there.
There it is.
Bingo!
Hey, Dan, real quick before we run out of time, I know you looked at the funding different ways. How does one look at this as a return on investment, an ROI? You know, at the other side of the equation, how do we determine if this is worth it or not?
Yeah, and there are so many of these studies about the economic impact of arenas and things like that. The reason I wrote it this way in comparing it to the Pfizer reform deal is because we've been here. We've seen the results for the last 8 years. And I think a lot of people would argue that this has been a largely effective deal in a lot of ways, but only because it was done right. And I think so far the fam deal has not been done right.
You can read the article. You should absolutely subscribe to the Recombobulation Area. Dan Schaefer joins us every Tuesday at 10:30. Thank you so much, Dan. We will see you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dan.
Stick around. We have the top of the hour news coming up when we come back. Trouble for a Little Paper. We'll update you about that. And then we have a comic joining us at 11:30. Going to be a lot of fun. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network.